1:14 a.m., North Atlantic, 400 miles east of Nova Scotia. The deep ocean was pitch black, not just dark, but absolute, swallowing even the faintest ray of light. At 900 feet below the surface, the U.S. Navy ballistic missile submarine, USS Tennessee SSBN 734, cruised silently through the cold water. A floating fortress carrying multiple Trident 2D5 nuclear missiles, she was built for one mission: stay hidden, stay undetected, remain ready. A ballistic missile submarine's greatest weapon wasn't its missiles, it was invisibility. But tonight, the Tennessee wasn't invisible. Tonight, she was being followed. 1:19 a.m., the first ping. It started with a sound so faint the sonar operator almost missed it. A soft click, metallic, mechanical, distant. He frowned and replayed it. Not random, not geological, not marine life. He enhanced the signal. Another click, then a faint harmonic resonance. His hand froze over the console. The computer displayed a probability match. Contact, possible Russian submarine, class Yasen or Akula. His voice cracked slightly as he called out, "Con, sonar, I have a faint trailing contact, bearing 206. Possibly hostile." Silence filled the control room. A hostile shadowing a U.S. nuclear ballistic submarine was not normal. It was a message, and a dangerous one. 1:21 a.m. Condition 2. Silent alert. Submarines do not raise alarms loudly. Everything is quiet, controlled, deadly serious. The captain moved to the sonar station. He listened. His jaw tightened. This wasn't imagination. This wasn't noise. Someone was behind them, and whoever it was matching their speed perfectly. A deliberate shadow, an underwater tail. The XO whispered, "If that's a Russian attack sub, they're inside launch range." Everyone knew what that meant. A single torpedo could end the Tennessee and ignite a global crisis. 1:25 a.m. The shadow moves. The Tennessee slowed. The shadow slowed. The Tennessee sped up. The shadow sped up. The Tennessee altered course by 5 degrees. There was no doubt now. This was a stalking. A Russian submarine, silent, skilled, and uncomfortably close, was shadowing one of America's deadliest assets. But why? A warning? A test? A provocation? Or something far more dangerous? The captain finally spoke. Match depth. Cut speed. Silent running. Let's see if they stay with us. 1:31 a.m. Silent running. The engines dropped to barely a whisper. Crew movements slowed. Orders were whispered instead of spoken. Breathing felt louder than usual. They drifted in near total silence. But the Russian submarine did not drift. It pursued. The sonar operator whispered the numbers. Range 2,200 yards. Too close. Far too close. The captain's face hardened. They're pushing us, testing our patience. But Russians didn't shadow ballistic submarines so closely without reason. This was intentional. But for what purpose? 1:36 a.m. The second ping. A sudden pulse vibrated through the water. The Russian sub had pinged them, not with active sonar. That would reveal its own position. This was different. A coded acoustic pulse. A message. One the Tennessee had no choice but to hear. The computer processed it, then displayed the translation. "We see you." The control room went still. This wasn't a Cold War. This was a psychological strike, an intimidation tactic. But then a second message came, "Do not continue." This wasn't intimidation. This was a warning. The XO's voice lowered. "They don't want us on this route." Why? A Russian submarine shadowing an American nuclear sub was alarming, but warning it off a location? That was new and deeply suspicious. 1:40 a.m. Unexplained activity ahead. The Tennessee's forward sensors detected something. A faint distortion, heat bleed, metallic particulates, like something ahead was working, cutting, digging, operating. Not natural, not accidental. Something big was happening. The captain squinted at the sensor data. That's industrial. Something large is ahead of us. And suddenly, the Russian warning made sense. The Tennessee wasn't being followed. She was being blocked from entering an area. Why? What was Russia hiding? Before they could form an answer, another contact appeared. 01:42 a.m., the third signature. The sonar operator's voice trembled. "Sir, new contact, bigger, deeper, unknown class." The computer struggled to classify it. Failed. Tried again. Failed. Finally, it displayed signature match, no known Russian platform. A chill ran through the crew. There were now 2 Russian subs in the area. one stalking them, one ahead of them, both blocking access, and something enormous, unknown, was generating activity deeper in the ocean. The Tennessee was in the middle of something far bigger than a shadowing incident. 01:45 a.m., the Russian move. The shadowing Russian submarine suddenly surged forward, crossed in front of the Tennessee, and fired a single burst of active sonar, a warning shot, a sound that meant only one thing underwater: stop. It wasn't aiming weapons. It wasn't posturing. It was forcing the U.S. submarine to halt. The captain clenched his jaw. Why are they keeping us back? The sonar operator looked pale. Sir, there's construction happening up ahead. Large scale. Construction? Underwater? In this region? By whom? And with what? 1:47 a.m., the final warning. The Russian submarine transmitted one final message, a short acoustic burst. The computer translated it, "Turn back now." And then a deeper, darker sound vibrated through the water. Not Russian, not American, not human. A low-frequency rumble that made the hull vibrate. The unknown contact ahead was moving, and whatever it was, Russia didn't want the U.S. anywhere near it. A Russian submarine shadowing a U.S. nuclear sub wasn't the threat. It was the warning, because something massive, something hidden lay ahead, and Russia didn't want the Americans to see it. 1:48 a.m., the deep rumbles. The unknown sound grew louder, low, vibrating, so powerful that the metal hull of the USS Tennessee shivered like a tuning fork. The captain steadied himself on the console. Something massive was moving in the depths ahead. The Russian submarine, the one that had been shadowing them, suddenly banked hard to starboard, retreating away from the source. The sonar operator whispered, "Sir, whatever is down there, even the Russians are scared of it." 1:49 a.m. Russian aggression or Russian fear? The second Russian submarine, the unknown class behemoth ahead, remained still, watching, guarding, blocking. A protective barrier, not an attacking force. The XO leaned closer to the captain. "Sir, they're not trying to provoke us. They're trying to keep us away from something. But from what? A weapon? A new submarine? An undersea construction site? No one knew. Yet the deep rumble grew louder, and the metal particulates in the water thickened. Something big was indeed ahead. 1:51 a.m., the Tennessee moves in. Despite the warnings, despite the shadowing, despite the buzz of danger, the Tennessee moved forward, slow, controlled, measuring every vibration. The Russian submarine fired another quick active pulse, a sharp sonic slap through the water, a serious one that meant, "Stop or we will force you." The captain kept moving, not fast, not aggressively, but steadily, purposefully. The U.S. needed to know what was ahead. Washington needed answers. The Russians wouldn't be guarding anything trivial. 1:52 a.m., the ocean floor lights up. Then, the seabed ahead flickered. Light, cold white light. Not natural, not bioluminescent, not military strobes. The sonar operator leaned forward. "Sir, I'm detecting artificial illumination on the seafloor. Lights, hundreds of meters down. What was Russia lighting up down here? A secret base? A reactor? A missile silo?" The captain whispered, "Magnify the forward feed." The external cameras adjusted. Static, distortion, pressure interference. Then, clarity. And what they saw was impossible. 1:54 a.m., the structure beneath. A massive structure was built into the seabed. Circular, metallic, reinforced. Not a submarine, not a station, not a dock, a hatch, an enormous metal hatch, at least 200 meters wide, partially buried in the ocean floor. The XO's voice cracked. "That's not Russian. It's far too old." The metal was corroded, weathered, ancient, as though it had been on the seabed for decades, maybe longer. The Russian submarines weren't building something. They had found something, and they were guarding it. 1:55 a.m., the hatch moves. A shudder rippled through the water. The pressure trembled. And then, horrifyingly, the giant circular hatch on the seafloor began to open, slowly, grinding, releasing silt and debris. The Tennessee rocked gently as a deep surge of warmer water rose from the opening. The sonar operator's eyes widened. "Sir, temperature rising 3 degrees, 4, 5, something hot, something powerful was emerging from the deep cavity below." 1:58 a.m. the shockwave. The giant object emitted a low-frequency pulse, not hostile, not aimed, just existing. But the energy wave it released rocked every vessel in the area. The Tennessee dipped sharply. The Russian submarines veered off course. Sonar temporarily went blind, and for a moment, the ocean felt alive. Then the object pulsed again. The computers interpreted the frequency. Activation, another pulse. Surface access denied. Then a final pulse, do not follow. The water trembled, and the object slowly began to move horizontally, away from the hatch, deeper into the Atlantic. Not toward Russia, not toward the US, toward something else, somewhere else. 0200 AM, Russian withdrawal. The Russian submarines immediately began retreating, sending one final burst to the Tennessee. Forget this. For your safety, the shadowing Russian submarine fired a final acoustic warning, not hostile, but urgent. Then both Russian vessels fled at flank speed, disengaging completely. Running 0201 AM. The Tennessee watches. It go. The USS Tennessee remained alone for a moment, watching the impossible object glide through the dark, leaving a massive trail of thermal disturbance. Then, without warning, the unknown object flickered from sonar and vanished. Not disappeared slowly, vanished. Instantly, like it slipped out of reality. The sonar operator stared wide-eyed. "Sir, it's gone." The captain spoke quietly. "No, it's still out there, somewhere." The Russian submarine wasn't the threat, it was the warning. Because beneath the Atlantic, something impossible lay hidden in the darkness. Something ancient, something enormous, something active, and now it was awake.